Thank you all very much. I'm Tobias. I'm one of the founders of Celos. As you already mentioned, it's really great to be here today and to talk a little bit about what we were building and maybe share some learnings that help you with that. And for that, let me also quickly share screen. So maybe as a small introduction for you to basically be able to put that into the right box, what I'd like to share with you also what we are doing, what we were building, and after that lead into a couple of key learnings and the 5 key learnings that we had for building a team to fight the impossible. Why am I saying it like that? If many of you are probably either already right in it and founded a startup and are now building up a company or are thinking about that, either way, you have now a hell of a journey ahead of you. And one thing is for sure, you can't do it without a team, and you need to build a team that does very hard things, especially if you want to go into the deep tech area, where in the beginning everyone will tell you that that's never going to happen and it's simply impossible. You need a team who is up for that challenge. And before I dive into that, I'd like to share a little bit about what we at Celos are building. And we are enabling engineers and electronics to create electronics in an easier and faster way. So actually, if you relate back to the quick talk right before me, Omar was saying electricity creates a lot of problems and AI also creates problems. We do both, so we must have double problems. And that is actually exactly what I'm talking about today. We build an all-in-one solution for electronics engineering automation. So basically you can imagine that like allowing an engineer to describe the functionality they want to build, and we automatically make all decisions that are needed for that. And to be able to achieve this, have to solve a lot of very complex tasks. And if you look into just a brief overview of the complexity that stands behind that and why everyone kept saying that that will never work out and it's just too hard to do, that's simply because electronics are basically you have to follow rules of physics and have to follow complex rules to create circuit design, something like you see here on the right, and have a huge amount of possibilities. So you have about 600 million different electronic components. You have huge amounts of information that an engineer needs to handle. And some of you might know the status quo of that is engineers read these data sheets you see on the left to find the best components for them and try to see how they can work together to actually create a circuit board that does the job. And this is a very hard and time-intensive task to do. For boards you see here on the right, that takes engineers weeks, months, or sometimes even years to build. And we are automating that and simplifying that process. And you might recognize one of the screenshots I had in here, right again on that slide there, because we take a functional requirement as input and create circuit boards like you see here on the right, completely, fully automatically, with complex algorithms, a large database, and AI making all of that actually happen. And you might think, and I guess that is a thought that many of you have, there are a lot of easier ways to found a startup and a lot of easier topics to work on. Why is deep tech worth the hassle in the first place? And that is simply because the opportunity, if you manage to succeed, is gigantic. In our case, that's one of the biggest markets that are out there. That's bigger than the entire mobility space. And pretty much everything requires electronics. And that's why going through that challenge can really pay off in the end. And that's the, let's say, global challenge of all deep tech startups. But what is true across all of them is nothing is possible without a strong team. You can't achieve that without having a strong team behind you, having your back. And that is especially true for you as a founder or as a, and even more so as a CEO, you have a very lonely job, and you won't make it through your entire journey if you don't have a team assembled around you that get you through all of the problems ahead. Because in the end, it's not you solving it, it's always a team behind you making all of that happen. And for that, we built, as Anna Teresa mentioned, now a team of by now about 38 people. So quite a lot more than you even see on that picture. And you might not find me there because, you know, someone has to take the picture and really build a team to make this happen. For that, I think the by far most critical learning, and that is something that you have to keep an eye on in the very beginning, is you can't take building a team serious enough. This must be the absolute top priority of every founder across everything you're doing. And with top priority, I actually really mean priority one. So if you think about, you have an important conversation with one of your team members and one of your investors calls, he should be second in line, or would argue even third in line. To my mind, to build a successful team, you actually have to make your team and building the team your priority one, your customers your second priority, and your investors your third priority. Because if your team is happy and your team works at their best, your customers will automatically get good service quality, good product, and they will be happy. And if your customers are happy, your investors will automatically be happy. And it doesn't work the other way around. And that's why it is really I would even argue across my entire talk today, if you take that with you, you actually have most important information, because that must be absolute top priority for every founder and everyone building a team. But also another part that is very important while building that team is you have no time to mitigate your weaknesses by learning or by improving yourself. Many will say that you should work on your strength and mitigate your weaknesses, to which I would say, excellent. That basically means do it all. And you just have to pick your battles. And that's why our way of handling that was always work on your individual strengths, do what you're best in, and hire for solving the weaknesses you have. So building a complementary team with very different strengths, and with that, make your weaknesses irrelevant, is way faster and way more effective than try to solve it all. And that's how we actually assembled our team. Another very important part there is to also balance the soft skills you have in your team. And I mean that especially in the context of how I called it, fighting the impossible. If you have no one in your team who is very resilient and who is basically going through the wall against all bad feedback and everything you hear, you just won't survive until the end. It can be very stressful situations. You will hear a lot of negative comments, a lot of bad things, and you need to have at least some in your team who can fight through that, but you shouldn't have too many of them. And that can lead to becoming blind, ignoring feedback of others. So that needs to be balanced. And I think I can actually make an example out of our team about that. If we, for example, look into our management team, we made sure that is partially by coincidence, probably, but quite well balanced. So I'm the very resilient guy. My natural tendency is if I hear negative feedback from a customer that says this is a stupid idea because of X, Y, Z, then my natural reaction to that is, you're wrong. X, Y, Z is not so important. This works. And that is important to basically have a filter and to pull through it. But at the same time, if you need to have someone in your team who then looks at it and says, maybe let's take X, Y, Z serious and find what that means and find where is a potential risk. And with that, really come out with a strong team fighting through it, and at the same time being very open for feedback and for needed change, and not get a blind spot. A similar balance that you have to achieve is quality versus speed, and I think that's a quite natural balance to most of you. And it's a bit different in the context of working on something that is real challenge, that is very hard to do, because that shifts a little bit. You have to have the right amount of people with the get stuff done fast mindset, and with a mindset of let's do it very well engineered and everything should work properly and test everything. And if that is not balanced, you might either be too slow or basically run into too many risks that in the end you can't handle and nothing really works out. And if I draw an example about us as a company in these two dimensions, we in the beginning were quite heavily on get done fast. With the first prototypes and first versions that were showing something were done in basically as fast as possible to as quickly as we could prove that this will be feasible. While doing so, we actually sacrificed so much quality that everything that we developed back then is completely gone by now, and now moved maybe even too far into the opposite end and built a very professional enterprise ready tool where the entire mindset is different. And I would say we probably haven't nailed that one yet, but constantly try to find the balance between these two sides. And the second point on making these, basically finding that mix, is really embrace diversity. That is also a point that I can't stress enough. Don't be afraid of literally anything that helps you in building a team with very different people. If everyone looks like you will run out of ideas super fast. And that's why you need to really find people that are very different, that have very different backgrounds, are basically different in everything, and don't be afraid of relocating, remote work, or really whatever you need to do to achieve that, because this will make or break what you're building, because you will need many creative and many new ideas, and you can't have them all. So that is also a critical factor. And if you look into our company, we now have 20 different nationalities in our team, have roughly 50-50 men and women, have many different cultural backgrounds, many different educational backgrounds. And also from a personal level, I think that's a way more fun environment to work in. We quite often hired people where we were saying, are they now too crazy? Are they too far out? And that always was a good idea, because it makes it way more exciting, way more change within the team. And that's, to my mind, a great environment to work in. And with these, I would like to conclude my 5 top learnings of how to build a team to work on something very hard and very complex. And there is a very fun journey ahead if you go through that. Make sure to have the right team around you to really make that a big success. Thank you.